The speaker could not be timelier in the event with the events and excitement we have coming to our community. So it's with great pride that I introduce our speaker. Steve Hill, I will not read your entire bio. I'm going to condense it. So Steve Hill is the Chief Executive Officer and President of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, LVCVA. Mr. Hill also serves as Chair of the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. And prior to all that, he owned Silver State Materials from 1987 until its purchased by Cal Portland in 2008, where he served as Senior Vice President until 2011. He was then appointed Director of the newly established Governor's Office of Economic Development, by Governor Brian Sandoval, where during his tenure, he lured numerous businesses to the state, including a few you may have heard of, Tesla, Apple, and Hyperloop. Steve Hill, welcome to the stage.
Before you start, let me tell a quick story.
Please.
What we didn't say in my bio was completely fine, but it ties into Derby Properties being sponsored today and my appreciation for the work that you all do. Back in the 90s, I decided I was going to get into the development business, and I knew Michael Derby. I called him and said, I don't know what I'm doing, can you help me out? And Michael and he's this kind of guy he is, was nice enough to spend about a day and a half with me explaining how to think about all the work that you do and how to do the math around it and how to make the projects pencil. I needed more than a day and a half, as it turns out, but they ended up building a great commerce center, which Parsh at the time bought, so it kind of ties into the breakfast theme today. So I have a very deep appreciation for how difficult it is for what all of you do, and have been thrilled to have been able to work with you over the years. So thanks for having me.
You didn't mention Silver State Materials. You built the company, sold it, were appointed to go in, and then took over LVCVA. And I think it's worth noting that everyone in this room kind of identifies with everything we've done in the last 15 years, which is really being an ambassador. There's something that we just talk to different crowds. But we're always pitching something that, and we're always pitching it to folks that don't really know much about it. So I think you'll always have friends and I appreciate you being there. You've been a very busy man, and I'm actually very grateful that you have some downtime over the next 6 months so that you can take it easy. I wanted to talk about, we'll do some general updates of what's happening in the next 6 months. You don't know the deal. We'll touch on sports, we'll touch on conventions, and we'll touch on transportation, interestingly. So, first off, let's talk about the big deals, and I know the big deals because the RJ tells me so. F1. What do you tell folks when you're trying to explain to them why it's such a big deal for us?
Well, and I've said this a number of times, Formula One in Las Vegas will be the biggest event in the world in 2023. There is nothing like it. And not only is the event great for Las Vegas, it will ensure that we have the best November we have ever had in the city. It may be big enough that it will ensure we have the biggest quarter that we have ever had. Or having it on a weekend that used to be the second toughest weekend in town. And so the difference between going from the 51st best weekend to the best weekend ever, changes everything about that week and that month for the city. It's going to bring in $100 million or so of tax revenue that just provides services, K through 12 education, higher education, healthcare. It's kind of tough to connect some of those dots when you're sitting in traffic that we helped on. I get that. But the first year is going to be the toughest. It will get better from here. And the spotlight that will be on Las Vegas just can't, frankly, be matched, particularly from an international viewership standpoint. I mean, there'll be 100 million people plus around the globe watching the spectacle of Formula One cars coming down Las Vegas Boulevard. It's just not something that is repeatable.
You said $100 million in tax revenue, there's a much larger number that when you're talking about economic impact, right? What is that number?
Yeah, that number is about 1.3 billion. And so that 1.3 billion is the economic impact, and the 100 million is the fiscal impact. And the economic impact is the incremental difference between what that weekend would have been without Formula One and what it is with it. It does not include the revenue that Formula One itself will generate. That is the revenue that will be spent in the city and kept in the city.
Okay. You mentioned the traffic, and I'm sure that we're gonna hear about that for a long time to come.
Cash I don't know.
We'll try to keep the comments from you. I remember because it took me an hour to get Golf to win one night.
I don't need to hear these stories.
So, but it speaks to the bigger issue in terms of cooperation between the private and public sector and cooperation from the LVCVA to NDOT to Clark County. I wrote this question down. Is this the largest undertaking in the history of Nevada in terms of cooperation between the public and private sectors in construction? Is that?
Well, I want to again recognize the chair of our board. You recognize the chair of the county commission. Commissioner Gibson is also the chair of the LVCVA. Commissioner Naft is also a member of our board. So I feel a little bit like I've got mom and dad. I think they would agree that this is probably the most difficult thing that we have ever done in Clark County. And the partnership that we have with the county and with our resort partners is something that has been a part of this community for a long time. You know, they've all built, you know, everything up and down the strip. And the fact that we work so well together, that we know each other, you know, we don't have to introduce each other when we say, hey, we've got a project that we need to do. That really matters. It allows us to take on these kind of undertakings and get them done. What's happened around Formula One has been pretty remarkable. We just announced the race on March 30th of 2022. So inside of 18 months, we're going to go from having nothing at all and having to start the design work to having a race. And that is something that countless people have worked on, and it has been hard.
And there's no pushing back the date. You gotta get that. So I think we should all commend everybody in this room that has made that one happen, because I can't imagine the extent of it is overwhelming. So I appreciate everybody in this room that made it happen. So are we in Monaco? Are we 10 levels past that?
You know, we talk about ourselves as a category of one. There was no place like Las Vegas 5 years ago, but there is really no place now. And what we're trying to accomplish is create further separation so that people think about Las Vegas and then they think about every place else. Monaco's I've never been to Monaco. I'm sure Monaco is a great place. There are a number of great places. You can have these events around the world. The Super Bowl is a great game in Phoenix or LA in the last couple of years. But what Las Vegas brings to an event or brings to a show, as you talked about earlier, you've got 1,500 people going to Seattle, you're gonna have 3,000 people coming to Vegas because people wanna come to Vegas. There's more attendance when you have an event in Las Vegas, and the experience around the event is so much more rich, it's so much more intense. You have the opportunity to do 3, 4, 5 things in that day rather than just that event. Mm-hmm. And that's what sets Las Vegas apart. And we're just trying to make that separation greater.
Yeah. Fontainebleau, let's jump to hotels real quick. Aside from it being maybe the longest construction project in the history of Nevada.
I'm glad it is now, though. It's fantastic that it's open.
But we have another massive hotel room coming online. So Is it a big deal because it's a hotel? Is it a big deal because it's adjacent to the convention center? Why is Fontainebleau such a big deal for us?
Well, in and of itself, it's a great project. It's a beautiful facility, and that's, having new properties, new offerings, which we've got a lot of right now. But just, when I started at the LVCVA in 2018, there was fatigue around parking fees, resort fees, and the fact that we hadn't opened anything in a decade. And it was, we're paying more for the same thing. Well, that's certainly not the case now, and you've stopped hearing about that fatigue as well. So when we open those new venues or properties, that really helps continue to provide a reason for our fans to come back. And so having them open is great. The fact that there was a 60-story kind of hulking blue empty structure in our city next to the convention center, the difference between going from that to having that building open is really a bigger deal than just, hey, starting from scratch 4 years ago and building a building too. The fact that that didn't devolve into a decaying structure is really matters a lot. And then the connection to the convention center has been really attractive to our customers. We have not had nearly as much connection as we have now. And the fact that it's a walkable facility, that it is complementary of what we do, is going to be beneficial too.
I was going to ask this in the convention part, but because Fontainebleau's coming online, hotel rooms, I know that quantity of beds is a very important part of the equation when it comes to tourism and that sales pitch when we're competing from the convention side. Once Fontainebleau's online, where do we stand in terms of how many rooms are available to the facilities we have? Because I was in Nashville a few months ago, and we paid $1,000 a night for a hut because of one single concert at a football stadium.
Yeah. Well, when the Fontainebleau opens, we will be at about 156,000 rooms in Las Vegas. That is the most rooms of any city in the United States by 25 or 30,000. There are, I think, 4 cities around the world that have either approximately the same number or some more, but 3 are in China and then Dubai. So we lead the United States in that category, and it's important for us. And frankly, as all of you know, for a city to remain vibrant, for an industry to remain vibrant, it needs to grow at least a reasonable pace. And so, a part of our job typically is, kind of the slang is heads in beds. But what we're really trying to do is drive demand for Las Vegas to the point that it allows projects to pencil, because it's hard now. Tillman Fertitta is going to, build from the ground up. That project, Resorts World was $1.25 million a key. If you're going to build a competitive property now, it's going to be $1.5 million, $1.7 million a key. You're going to need real demand for the entire suite of your offerings in order to make a project like that work. You need 88% occupancy, you need room rates that support it, and that is what we feel our job is.
$1.7 million a key. I'll remember that for the rest of my life.
Now, Tillman may get it done less expensively than that, I don't know. But if you projected Resorts World at this point, that's about what you'd get.
Got it. Super Bowl, another not so big deal. I would like it to be here every year. I don't know if we can do that, but why is Super Bowl a big deal? And I mean, how often can we get it here?
Well, we've said out loud that our goal is for the NFL to want to be here every year. We want to do that kind of job on this Super Bowl that they're disappointed, frankly, when they have to go someplace else. They're going to have to go a few other cities periodically, I think. They did say recently that we would be in the rotation. and that rotation is 6 or 7 cities, and then they'll plug an additional one into that periodically. So, we'd like them back in 4 or 5 years. It's probably an every 6 or 7 year cycle kind of thing. But we know that we're going to knock their socks off. And, the host committee, I just want to give a shout out to them because it is a cross section of our community that has come together to make that event great. And they are doing a fantastic job. They really are. The NFL's impressed, even more impressed than they knew they were going to be coming in. And rightfully so. The host committee's just done a fantastic job.
Yep. I have heard that. I've seen it. I've witnessed it. It's fantastic. Oakland A's and then NBA. If you know baseball, you can respect this question. We're sure they're coming. Yes?
They are. Is that a question? Okay.
Yeah.
No, they are completely committed
Hope
to coming.
for confirmation, I think.
No, in fact, you may have seen that yesterday we had the First Stadium Authority meeting with the A's there. We introduced the lease and the community benefit agreement drafts so that, public and the county commission and others could start to provide input on that. But we anticipate a vote for Major League Baseball really during the Formula One practice date on November 16th, and hope that Major League Baseball will authorize that move, and then it's full speed ahead.
Okay. And Tropicana, pretty confident as well?
Yes, yeah. In fact, the legislation requires that the site be there at the Tropicana.
Good to know. And then this question, I suppose it's for the A's and also transitioning into the NBA question. Between the Raiders and the Knights, were there lessons learned during the entire process? Because it's really a negotiation of multiple things, right? You've got to build a building in addition to get the league to let them be here. So is that a learning curve that we just got better every time, or it's pretty much a unique process every time because the leagues are so different?
Well, the process with the Knights was completely different than the process with the Raiders. I mean, Bill Foley on his own said, I'm going to move to Las Vegas. He reached out into the community, got support for that, and the community certainly supported it. I think some of the people who supported it, and I'd say I was probably one of them, were not certain that it would work at the time. But they've just done such a fantastic job of moving into the community and being successful, being integrated, and showing what Las Vegas can do for a professional sports franchise, that it's really helped pave the way for others. They've seen the success and want to be a part of it. The Raiders obviously had a big public contribution to Allegiant Stadium. And it's what it takes in order to get a football stadium in a mid-sized market. And I'll just tell this real quickly, but if you compare it to Levi Stadium in San Francisco, which was built almost solely with private money, there are twice as many suites in Levi Stadium that sell for twice as much as what they sell at Allegiant Stadium. That difference is about $50 million a year in revenue for the 49ers. You can bond about 15 times annual revenue on something. That's the $750 million. That's really where that number comes from. That difference in a large city that has a big, huge corporate base and can buy all those suites at a higher price doesn't exist here. And it's why mid-market cities have to provide some level of contribution in order to have professional sports team at a competitive level. The other is, and there's difference between Major League Baseball and the NFL, national media rights are split evenly through teams in the NFL. In baseball, hockey, basketball, there are still regional sports networks. So for example, the Dodgers have a regional sports network media contract that's $125 million. We will have the smallest regional sports network for baseball of any major league city. That contract's probably in the $40 or $50 million range. That difference every year matters to a team being competitive as well. It's why some portion of public funding is necessary for those two leagues. the stadium being in Las Vegas is going to be great because it brings the A's, but it also is something that we know is important for other events. And those other events are going to matter from an economic generation, a job generation, a tax revenue generation, really at kind of a par with baseball.
Okay. You mentioned the suites and that differential. That's a totally different metric from ticket revenue, right?
Right.
Because we actually use this data in one of our marketing packages for Las Vegas Boulevard. If you look at ticket sale revenue on an annual basis, the Raiders are #1 in the NFL, and #2 is significantly below that. And that happened when they came to Las Vegas. And I'll ask a question about that later, but I think that is a big deal, and it proves up a lot of stuff that nobody believed in us. We're a middle market. We're just a gambling town. So
Certainly, the NFL had concerns. Bo and UNLV were really helpful in explaining what they thought the landscape would be. That's turned out to be even better than what they presented at the time. But you can see the value of the Raiders after having moved here. They moved here. They were valued at $1 billion, and 5 years later, they're at $6 billion. And it's what Las Vegas does for these teams and events, and it's just fantastic synergy that is to the benefit of everybody involved.
Yep. We see it. The NBA, I'm sure you were there at the most recent Las Vegas Perspective. The CEO was up on stage and told everybody with a very stern tone that we don't need anybody's money. I'm going to build it. I've known the NBA for a long time, and the thing about them is you got to build it, and then they'll come. I think we all believe him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's way out South Las Vegas Boulevard, right?
Yep.
Does the community see that still being the same story in terms of what happened with the Raiders and ticket sale revenue? Is it the same story even though it's so far away from the core of the Strip?
Well, it's not that far away.
It's one bus ride.
Yeah,
it's one bus ride. Fair.
2 or 3 miles
Psychologically
south.
for me.
Look, I've said this before. Tim Lywicki, who owns the Oakview Group, that is going to build the arena there and a development around it, it may be the smartest person in this field in the United States. He is an exceptional guy. When he says something a good idea, you better think twice about disagreeing with him. He knows what a good idea is and what isn't. His experience is in all of the fields that kind of lead up to this. He used to run AEG. He's built arenas around the country. He's operating, he just took over the operations at the McCormick Center in Chicago. It's a remarkable company. We're fortunate to have him here. And I appreciate his statement about not needing public money. I've also said this publicly, and it's not my decision to make, but I wouldn't recommend public money be put into a competitive arena. We've got T-Mobile, we have other arenas in town. We've got one here. That I think is a mistake to do. When you have a kind of a singular type facility, we're not going to have a competitive NFL stadium. We are not going to have a competitive Major League Baseball park. But we have competitive arenas. And so if somebody wants to build another arena, I don't think it's appropriate at that point for public money to be put into it. So I'm glad he's willing to do it on his own, and I think it'll be successful.
He said, I think it was 6 or 7, he said, we built 6 or 7 arenas around the world during COVID. You know how much anybody else in the world built? 0. And
we built a football stadium.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just said don't disagree with him.
Yeah,
so
okay. Good point.
And this is
Good point.
recorded, so. So I'm going to stay away from
I wasn't disagreeing with him. He built all the arenas.
But it really kind of communicated that it's not a large field. There's not a lot of players in that game.
Yeah, he's great at it.
We already asked the hotel rooms question. We don't know what the names are going to be for the NBA team? No? We don't?
They haven't asked me my opinion of that yet. Yeah, no.
All right, I had to ask. I love expansion teams. So I don't know how old this title is, but I'm born and raised here. My family's been here a long time. We are now calling ourselves, I think rightly so, the sports and entertainment capital of the world. I think we've all talked about entertainment capital of the world for quite some time, but we have now proved up that we are a different place for sports altogether, and the ticket sale revenue speaks to that. I mean, really, we're a town we've created sports events as a vacation destination, right? And has that changed the entire sports world view of Las Vegas? Is it a case-by-case basis with different sports? And was it a proof of concept that nobody knew it was going to be a proof of concept for?
Yeah, I think it's not only changed the view that the entire sports world has of Las Vegas. At some level, it has caused some sports to just start thinking about Las Vegas. But it has changed the brand for the city. And when we market, there's about a quarter of the population that really doesn't have much interest in listening to what we have to say or coming to Las Vegas. And because of sports, really for two reasons. One is that, when the NFL says you're okay, and when Major League Baseball says you're okay, and the NHL says you're okay, people start to change their mind about the city. We have matured, and the offerings we have are broad. You can get everything you could get 20 and 40 years ago, but we've added to that. But the other thing that happens is, if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan and you're not necessarily thinking about Las Vegas, when they play the Raiders, it's caused people who wouldn't necessarily otherwise consider coming to come. And once they experience what we have here, they want to come back. And being able to kind of eat into that 25% is a really valuable thing, because there's not many things that will allow you to do that. And sports and the big live entertainment are the two things that we've seen that really caused folks to reconsider.
So that's actually a great segue into a little story that I have that leads into a question for you. I have a friend, started out as a client, now a very good friend, owned a bunch of sandwich shops, national brand, owned a bunch of sandwich shops in town, and wanted to do a drive-through. And they had just created this drive-through committee for the brand nationwide, and we did it. He did it very well, and he was ready for the next store, and he told me, "Hey, I'm ready for my next store, let's go." And he said, "But I will never not do a drive-through again." And obviously, you hear that, you think, well, you're making more money with the drive-through, that makes sense. But I said, well, come on, man, you're a sandwich shop. That's a hard field to compete in. There are a lot of drive-throughs that make a lot of money out there. And he said, the reason is I get customers in my drive-through that I've never seen before, that have never come into my store. It's a whole new base or a whole new group of folks that have never come to my shops before, whether it's women with children in the car seats in the back or somebody with a physical handicap that it's really hard to get out of their car. And he said, that's why guaranteed I will never ever not do a drive-through again, because my base has expanded. And when it comes to heads and beds, which is that's the mission, right? That's really what you try to do, is figure out how you get people that have never been here before, that are in groups that have no reason to come here, and get them to come here. So sports has obviously done that to a big extent. Is there anything else? Is sports sort of the final frontier of cracking into that 25%?
I want to recognize Kate Wick, who's our Chief Marketing Officer. She should answer this question. She's the brains behind all this. We don't think it's the final frontier. It is really what is making a difference right now. People ask me a lot, what's next in Las Vegas? And my answer to that is virtually always the same. And I've had the opportunity to be involved with all kinds of different fantastic events and projects, none of which have been my idea. I mean, we're all here to facilitate those, And so I don't really know what's next, but I know that sports has a pretty long run to
Long
go in Las Vegas. It is making a huge difference. The live entertainment that we are bringing to this town. I mean, you look at what you can do over a weekend or on any given night in Las Vegas, it's remarkable. And that has got legs. And so, we've got, some unknown amount of time where we're going to ride that wave, and it's working great.
Sounds like a couple few decades.
Yeah, I hope so.
F1's a big one, right? Same
Sure.
story.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Somebody, one of our members said a while back that you have no idea the amount of billionaires who have never wanted to come to Vegas before who are going to be in Vegas. So that really speaks to the same story. Let's hop over to conventions. We're at 9 o'clock. I think we're trying to get to Q&A by 9:10, 9:15. How are we doing on that? In the post-COVID world, are we back to pre-COVID sort of attendance and industry sentiment?
Yeah, we really are. In 2019, we had 6.6 million visitors here who were here because of a meeting or a trade show. We're going to be approximately at that number this year. We will clear it next year for sure. Our goal at this point is not just to get back to where we were in 2019, because during the pandemic, we added 3.5 million net square feet of space to the 11.5 million that we had in Las Vegas. So our goal at this point is 8.3 million visitors. It's just proportional to the square footage. One of the interesting issues there, though, is that leisure travelers have performed so strongly during the recovery from COVID that they're actually providing competition to meeting visitors during the week. And so finding room blocks, and this is kind of back to we're trying to drive demand and it's working. Finding room blocks for meetings has become somewhat more difficult because leisure travelers are so enamored with Las Vegas and coming back.
It's a competition, right? I think it's Orlando, it's Chicago, or those are two primary competitors in the convention field.
They're the largest, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how, in terms of rate and available space, how do we pair up to them? Are we, kind of in line?
Yeah, once our renovation is complete, the McCormick Center's 2.6 million net square feet. Ours is, 2.55 million net square feet, so they're roughly the same. Orlando's about 2.1 million square feet. There's some amount of competition, but those shows are huge. They need to go where they need to go. Once they're there, they don't often move. They do every now and then. It is really the development of new shows, the growth that comes in the industry that we're after. It's not that we wouldn't take a show from Chicago or Orlando, and that happens every now and then, but our show growth is really new shows that are being developed and then grow from there.
Okay, interesting. And that's really, I assume that with huge innovations in our worlds come new conventions, right? Do you guys view the convention industry as sort of a stable, mature industry that just has stable growth for indefinitely?
No, I think it will continue to grow. It's very industry sector centric. And so you'll see ups and downs. You'll see, you're going to start to see a bunch of AI shows. You got an AI conference coming up. AI is a big topic. Show organizers, there are professional show organizers out there, and then there are associations that own shows. Those are really the two most common business models. But the professional show organizers are big publicly traded companies. And so they just pay attention to different industries, develop expertise in those areas, and then start shows. And then they'll geographically clone those shows. They'll do one in the Western Hemisphere, they'll do one in Asia, and they'll do one in Europe. And so what we're trying to do is develop relationships with those show organizers so that when they start a show, they think about starting it in Las Vegas. When there is value in the show, they grow. When the industry starts to deteriorate, if the show's not providing value, then that show will start to shrink. Retail lately has been tough, just like the retail industry has had some difficult times. So it's very industry. The answer to that question is very industry centric.
Did we ever have a crypto convention?
Well, yeah, no, we've had crypto
Have we?
conventions, sure.
That's still okay?
If they're paying rent and they're in rooms, it's okay
That's
with
the
me.
spirit. That's how we get there. So I was looking at the LVCVA's website, and one of the primary tabs up top is transportation. And in our room, in our industry, we're used to the RTC, we're used to NDOT, we're used to those conversations, and we're used to building, roads and sidewalks and that whole process, right? You have a totally different take, and the LVCVA, clearly putting that as a tab on the website is a huge priority. Is it a co-op? Are you doing your own thing? How does it work when we're talking about transportation? Because obviously, everybody in this room thinks about the boring company. Is it more than that? And do you cooperate with NDOT and RTC on broader goals for the community?
Sure, and that really starts with the county. That partnership matters a lot, and that's with respect to the monorail as well as the boring company. We do see the boring company as one of the solutions for the traffic around Formula One. It's a natural. You get some tunnels that provide access in and out of the circuit, and you're going to start to see a real difference in the impact that the race has on this community. And we think that's possible in the next year or two to start having that kind of input and supply for workers as well as attendees at the event. We bought the monorail a couple of years ago. When we bought it,
Turned it profitable?
yeah, it is profitable enough right now that we're trying to extend its life.
Awesome.
Yeah, we are going to have, we made $5.5 million last year on a net $20 million investment, and it will be reasonably higher than that this year. So yeah, and it's an important transportation vehicle at this point too. We're going to move 5.2 million people on it. We certainly don't want to put those folks back on the road.
Right.
So yeah, we are now looking at least getting to the end of the life of the trains. The trains 6 years ago would have cost $220 million to replace. And that is not going to make financial sense. But to the extent that we can extend the life of the trains in the system, we will attempt to do that.
Okay. I've heard a lot of different deal structures. I work with some folks that own property in Chinatown, and I've seen, maps where the loop even stops in Chinatown, and it's a beautiful map. It's a very exciting map. What is the timeline right now? When do we think that loop, that map is done?
Well, I don't know. It kind of depends on which map you're looking at this point. The original map was 28 miles of tunnel.
Okay.
What currently has land use permits is 68 miles.
Wow.
So that planning continues to grow. We did what is an important transportation system under our campus, but it was also a demonstration project for the system that has worked exceptionally well. We're connected to Resorts World. We're connected to Westgate, although the tunnel and the station are not quite complete yet. We're connected to Wynn and Encore with the first tunnel there. It's not complete. It'll open in the spring. We are working through plans for additional submittals for building permits. So one's in the city from Stratosphere down to Fremont Street, and then connecting the Stratosphere to the system there at the convention center. Another is running from the convention center south on University down to Thomas and Mack, over on Tropicana to the Tropicana, and then at some point, it's not certainly submitted yet, but down to Russell, over to Mandalay Bay, and over to the stadium. Those hopefully start moving relatively soon. And then we've recently, just in the last number of weeks, started looking pretty hard at what we can do quickly around the Formula One circuit. The need is there. That opportunity for solution is pretty evident. There's a couple of routes that could be done soon. It's maybe by next race, if we can move that quickly. Just anything that would help there would be really beneficial. So, obviously the partnership we have with the county on that, we'll work with them on that to see if that's possible. But soon, that will help that traffic around Formula One.
Yeah. I realized I failed miserably by not prompting Q&A, and if you had Q&A.
You have really great questions, Steve, so it's A-okay.
So
We'll try to
wonderful.
get a few in quickly. We have a ton from the audience. One is, what happens to the paddock at F1 the other 11 months of the year?
They will activate that site. They haven't completely decided what the entire 40-acre facility will look like, but that paddock building is set up where, customers in our building, customers who are here for meetings, that paddock area will be available for that. I'm sure that, they will allow or facilitate meetings and demonstrations for the automotive industry. There's been a lot of interest expressed from car companies throughout the world to be there. We've looked at some pretty interesting things. This isn't going to happen, but for example, we looked at doing the outdoor annual NHL outdoor game there at the paddock. It doesn't work. But we're expanding the horizon of at least what we're thinking about there.
Is anybody worried about 82 baseball games a year in Las Vegas?
No, because if you have 82, the 82nd one would be a playoff game, so we'd be pretty happy about that.
Oh, touche.
Major League Soccer?
For the reasons that I talked about earlier, Major League Soccer is a tough thing to make work in Las Vegas right now. It's a tough thing, frankly, from a profitability standpoint for the league. They had a team make money for the first time recently, and it's in a big market with a facility that was already built. Building a standalone stadium, being a small market team, I think sooner or later this works. But it's of the 5, major professional sports leagues, I think that's the toughest right now.
Impact of the Sphere.
I don't know if you've all been to the Sphere, but if you have not been, you just really need to go. It is everything you could hope it would be and more. It was hard for that place to live up to the hype, and it did. It's an amazing experience. The visuals, the audio, are just, they're very hard to describe, but it's symphony hall quality with 18,000 people there. There aren't too many things that one thing is the reason somebody will come to Las Vegas for. There are, most people come because they're going to have a great weekend, or they're going to have a great week, or they're coming maybe for a show. A trade show. But from a leisure perspective, the Sphere is a draw to Las Vegas in and of itself. And it is one of the best marketing opportunities you can find because everything you put up there goes viral. And so it costs a fair amount to advertise on the Sphere, but the coverage that you get in earned media is just unbeatable at this point. That combination of things makes the Sphere just a fantastic addition to the city.
There was a lot of Sphere questions. Can they do their own conventions there? Are they competing with you?
Sure. No, our perspective really from our building standpoint is we'd rather see everybody else full and then we'll fill ourselves up. So we help sell the rest of the city. We'd help sell something into the Sphere. Thrilled to have that venue and that opportunity for folks. And if that's where they need to be, it's up to the customers where they go.
There was a question on the amount of people that come in for Raider games, or a lot of times they're largely out of town. What is the modeling for A's baseball, local season tickets versus out of town?
Yeah, the projection for the A's was that we would have 5,000 people at a game who came to Las Vegas because the game was here. It's not really a huge number. at 81 games, obviously, that turns into 405,000 people. The projection originally for Allegiant Stadium, which was twice the public investment that the baseball stadium was going to be, was 450,000 people. So we knew it was worth it at 450,000 at Allegiant. That's turned into about 850,000. So Allegiant has way overperformed what the original modeling included. But just baseball at the A's Stadium is 405,000 people. What was modeled, and it wasn't our modeling, was an additional 8 ticketed events. We think that's less than half of what the additional ticket events will be. So that is going to be the most efficient investment of public funding that we've provided.
We're going to finish right on time. Thank you, commissioners, for showing up to our breakfast. Thank you very much, Steve Hill. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to our,
Thanks, everybody.
I don't know. Thank you to our sponsor, Dermody Properties. Thanks, Dan and Reed. Mr. Hill, appreciate you very much. It's very clear that there's a lot in that head, and I'm very glad that you're never going to retire.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. That concludes today's program.